Hi, welcome to the Jumpers, Rompers, and Overalls episode of this series. And I thought I would just do a quick intro. We have some lovely garments for you. We'll start with the normal jumpsuit. Well, nothing's normal in my world, so there you go. But this is a fabulous one. It's got very easy, just stitched on here. The straps are stitched on. And then at the back, I actually used a D-ring, or you could use any metal kind of ring. You don't even have to do that, but we'll show you how to do that. So it's just tied onto there and sewn. This is a loop, and then this comes through, and we tied it. And then the back, of course, I stitched a big patch on the back of one of my favorite fabrics, actually. And back pocket, it's got a longer crotch and the elastic legs. And it's really fun on this little pocket. So that's one. We have this one, which is a little bit more heavy in the front, so it gives you a little bit, so more like a jumper, but with pants. And this is fabulous. It's got a little placket there, very easy, and it's got welt pockets. They're all very different. I love this back. I just cut out a piece of upholstery fabric that I love, so I put it on. And then we have this one, which I love, and it's got side pockets. So they're all got different little side pockets and pieces. These are lovely. I've worn these. They're fantastic. With a little t-shirt underneath, or you could do something like a voile shirt. They're fantastic. And throw a jacket on. It's just lovely. And it depends on all the fabric that you use. This is a linen. This is a cotton linen. This is a woven fabric from Diamond. And this is a heavier linen that I found that I loved. And this is a fantastic piece. It's got a sleeve, little sleeve, just so that your arm sticks out. It's a little wider than your body, not very wide. And it's got a tie that goes right through the garment, so you can cinch it in as much as you want. And then it's got a little kind of mandarin collar there. And then the back, it has a yoke. You can see how we finished these, which are really fun. Thread there. And for fun, I put the label on the back. And there you have it. So we're going to be making these garments, some in full and some just showing you techniques, because there's some simple pieces that we don't really need to cover. But this is a great beginner pattern. This is too. This is slightly more intricate. There's a great dot, actually, down the side of the leg, which is fantastic. And you could put pockets on the back, but I decided because of the belt, it was just a little too much. I think this is very elegant. And we're going to be making it in a cream, so you can see all the detail that we do. This is a placket for the front, and it has these awesome buttons. I like it. So welcome, and let's get started. The pattern for the jumpers is very versatile. As I said, we've got lots of versatility in the necklines and pockets, placement, straps, and the bottoms of the legs. So this one, it is such a simple make. It's very easy. It's one piece that I cut both of them on the fold, and you'll notice that the front is just short. It's about 2.5 inches shorter than the back. So it's high in the back. It just sits nicer. And it's a little bit of a low crotch, but I'm very comfortable in these, and this is the same pattern. I chose this fabric because online we've all seen the overalls with the fun prints. And I found this gorgeous linen, and it is just like, it screams summer. So I'm very excited about wearing these. We've got our back and our front, and in this way we're going to, and everything I'm doing here you've probably seen before, but we're going to review it again. So for this, your cut pieces are the back and the front of your jumpers. We've got binding here for the armholes. I'll get to this in a minute. We've got straps. We actually finished these, so these were about 4 inches wide, and we just tucked in the ends and pressed and stitched down each side, edge stitch, so they're nice and secure. And the length of these, you're going to cut one length, and then you're going to adjust it when you try on your jumpers to make sure that you're comfortable with where they sit in the front and the back. And there'll be a little excess there, so you can cut that off. So with these, there's no adjustment. With these, there's no adjustment. Or you can place buttonholes, which we'll get to, where you can actually make a buttonhole and make a longer tie and pull it through the buttonhole, which is a nice look. We also have, for the front, that will sit in the front, we have this. This is about, what is this, 3.5? This is about 3.5 inch wide. It's a pattern piece, so that's for the front and the back. We're going to bind the front and the back. It just gives the overalls an anchored look. And then we're going to use the binding for the deep armhole. The pockets, there's a fun little pocket that is this size, and we folded it over the top edge once, and then again. You can serge all the edges before you do this. And then we're going to pull this, we're going to trim the corners. Actually, we could fold the corners and pull them through. And by folding the corner, I mean you're going to wrap the seam allowance to the back to form that point, and then push it through. And it gives it a nice point. The side pockets are easy to put on. Make sure you are comfortable with the placement of the pockets and pin in place. What I do is I place each of the front and back folded in the same place, matching armholes, and then I measure, wherever I wanted it. Mine is 2 inches down from the edge. Yours could be lower. All our arms are different lengths. And I continue to pin the pockets on the right sides facing, and for the back as well. So we'll stitch those in place and then press it so the seam allowance is away from the pant, and then we're going to top stitch that down. At the same time, I'm going to pin the pockets in place. This is the front. And you can make much larger pockets. You can make smaller pockets. And what we did was, once you turned it, as I stitched and turned it to the wrong side, it creates this. And then you press down your sides. You could, and then you're going to place your pocket. We're pinning on the back because we're putting side pockets, and we want it simple at the front. So we put the side pockets in and left the fun pockets for the back. Again, folded and pressed down. And now I'm going to stitch this fun little rectangle pocket at the back, center back of my back piece, and then my back pocket, which I'm going to put a little lower just for fun. So we're going to stitch the pockets on, And this rectangular one, what will happen is it'll gape a little bit, so we're going to top stitch down the center. So it just gives like just a little fun play on pockets. You'll never use that pocket, but it's a fun addition. And we have the pockets all sewn on. So here's our front, pockets on the sides, and our back with our pocket in the center there, really fun, and the pocket down there, plus our side pockets. So what we're going to do next is the fronts. We're going to finish the fronts of our piece. And you can see that they should fit sort of across your bust front. Remember, seam allowance. So we don't want it too wide and we don't want it too narrow on this piece, on this style option. So we have our strip, and we're going to stitch this onto the right side onto the wrong side of the fabric. Binding across the top. Here's our front. Here's our binding. I'm placing it onto the right side onto the wrong side of the jumper. We're going to stitch that, and then we're going to flip it over using just 1/4 of an inch. Flip that over, and then you're going to stitch it down. So it's got a nice strong binding across the top of your jumpers. So we'll stitch those on, and then we're going to do our side seams. So the binding's on. Doesn't that look terrific? So, and it's very nice and clean. So we're going to trim off the edges, just straight, in line with the armhole. Very straight. And the same with the back. And don't forget to top stitch on the binding, onto the binding here. Just edge stitch it and edge stitch it on the very top edge. The next step is we're going to put our binding. Here it is. And I cut binding, which is a little bit short, so we're going to join it. And the way we do that, so there's not a lot of bulk if you just added it together. You place your one piece and then your second piece over it, and you draw a vertical line across to the point. And then when you press it open, it looks like that. So it's a diagonal. And we're going to snip off that, so that when it rolls over, the join is on one side, it's over here, and then it's over here. So it's not double. So once you've got enough binding, we're going to bind the armholes. And I want to see the binding. So we're going to do it the same way that we did our top band. Right side of the fabric of the binding to the wrong side of the fabric. And that way when you flip it around and you tuck it in, you have control of what it's going to look like on the outside. Because if you stitch it on the back end, if you did it backwards, you're blind stitching. So this way it comes out perfect. So the armholes have been bound. And they look fantastic. So here we have almost finished. This is a very quick project. You can do this under 3 hours. The next part is going to be putting the straps on. And you can do this in a number of ways. What I suggest is we stitch it on. You're going to fold the edge and pin it in place onto the top binding and along this binding will be here. Okay, and then our other one, same thing. And this is going onto the front. And once you have them placed in onto the front, then you can pin them onto the back and adjust the length of the strap so that you're comfortable. And the way you get into these because we didn't do a placket or anything, is as long as the piece can go over your hips. When you open this up, this is the way you're going to get into the jumper. So if you measure it, and this is 20 inches, so 40 inches. So this is the way you're going to get into the garment. But you should measure across the straps and the neck opening, and I get 20 inches. So if I double that, that's 40 inches. So that's okay for me. That's okay for me. But if it's not, then we need to make the straps adjustable. And you have a number of ways to do that. You can put the two straps on, you can cut it and put two straps on and tie them at the shoulder. Then you are open. Or you could put buttons over here, or you could put a buttonhole on the front end on both sides here, attach them at the back, and then pull your strap through the buttonhole and tie a knot, which is really cool. And then you would have that. But if you don't like that messiness and you don't like the tie then on the shoulders, then, which I don't really like, because when I put a jacket on, I've got those ties right here. So it's not versatile. It's very roomy. This goes down quite, the armhole goes down, it dips quite a bit, so you have to wear a shirt that's like hip length, or a t-shirt that's a little bit longer than a normal t-shirt. And then the bottom we have different options. You can do hem it, and then in the ones I'm wearing, we took a strip of just tape, like twill tape, and inserted it to give it this kind of look. The other idea is to do a drawstring with a tie on the outside to two buttonholes. Fold your fabric over, thread your drawstring through the two buttonholes, and do a knot. And then you could just hem it, which is what we're going to do on this one. And then that's it. So it's a really lovely make. I really love these, and putting them together is really simple. It's a really beginner pattern, I would say, and a great result. It's deep in the sides, here on the armhole, nice pockets, and you can make this in any fabric, print or solid. So these beauties, this is called INGA, the INGA Overalls, and the INGA Overalls have this great dart in the pant leg, pockets on a curve, like very simple pocket, we'll show you, placket with buttons, and a nice yoke at the back. That's very easy. And then the belt actually goes right through the sides of the piece. And you can make this wider or you can make it slimmer. It's quite a slimming, actually, a slimming piece. So the first thing we're going to do is our pockets. And how we did this is very simple. We had filmed all of this without sound, so I'm redoing this part. So what we did was we actually folded, you see, we finished this part first. So what you do there, and go through the instructions, is we folded this. You're going to flip the top edge onto the right side of the fabric, and then you're going to stitch these two sides down. Then you're going to flip that over to the wrong side, so it's actually sitting inside the pocket. And you get this top edge and the side edge really clean. It also allows you, this will fold automatically, so you'll fold in your edges. We finished the edges and then folded it, stitched it and folded it down. So you can see you get a nice perfect edge. So with that is your top of your pocket, and we're going to place our pockets, but before we do that, we do the pleat, or the dart, excuse me. So the dart is on the leg of the pant, and you're going to fold right sides together and stitch your dart down. And then we top stitched it. And it gives the pant just a nice shape. Then we're going to add our pocket where you marked it from the pattern piece. And here, so we're going to stitch the pockets down, and then we're going to move to the yoke and the back. They're so fun. And you can take it a step further and do a double stitch, because we're using contrasting stitching in color. That would be fun to do. So the next step here is doing the crotch seam. So if you notice, the front has got this placket, and then the pattern has you cut it out like so. So this is your placket that falls in the front of your garment. So right now, we're just going to, right sides together, sew that curved edge, which is your front crotch, to that mark. And then we will go on to sewing on our placket. On the back side, I sewed the curved seam, which is my back, together. So I have my back. So the next thing we're going to do is pin our yoke right sides together, and it curves. So you can make sure you get the center there and pin it in place and stitch that on. Make sure I've got the center. And the option is top stitching. So we're going to stitch the crotch seam, and then we're going to stitch on the yoke, and then we're going to work on our placket. So the crotch seam is done. Our pockets are in place. So now we have sort of one piece here. And now we're going to do our placket. So there are two strips and same length, and I folded them in half, right sides facing outward. So I pin one on one side, 1/4 inch from the edge of the opening. So I've got this fabric to play with when I fold it over. This is the same length. You're going to pin it on, and again you're going to stitch to 1/4 inch, which is right by the edge of that. I actually trimmed off this excess, because I just need one side to have this flap. Okay, they're in the instructions. And then I'm going to pin them both in place, and we'll stitch those on so that when we fold this in, we're going to fold the shorter edge in, and it's going to tuck in. But this side is going to flip over that, and we're going to fold this upward, that flap, and it's going to stitch down perfectly. So I pinned this in place, but let's unpin it. And there's so many ways to do a placket. This is an easy one. So we stitched the shorter length on the left side and the longer edge, longer one, on the right side. Right, left. So I'm going to pull this left side and tuck that in. And we'll top stitch along here. And then I'm going to fold, this is the longer one. I'm going to fold that, and I'm going to find my the center line there, and it's going to overlap. And we're going to top stitch this down. And just tuck in that long edge. And these should overlap. Let's look at the back. There's a little tuck there, and you're going to stitch this down here. So we finished the placket and sewed it down, and then we added our buttons and buttonholes. Very easy to do, and I just marked off the 5 buttons down the front. You don't have to do 5, you could do more. I was looking at larger buttons, but you've got to be careful when you're making your overalls. You don't want to look clownish, especially in a solid, because that can happen. So you want to keep it, little buttons I think are much better. And we've got our pockets in place, and I'll dart up the leg, and when our front is finished. Our back is done too. We've got our yoke, and we've sewn the center back seam crotch piece. So now all we have to do is sew the shoulders together. And you can either French seam the shoulders and stitch them down. When you're making overalls, there's quite a bit of fabric in here. So you want to make sure that your shoulders are solid, just to be secure. So we're going to stitch the shoulders together and top stitch them, and then we will be ready to match our side seams from the armhole down. And so that would be our next step. So the shoulder seams are done, and we top stitched, and the sides are done. So we are seeing it come to life. Really cute. A word on the top stitching. So on this one, we actually didn't do any top stitching. The fabric was heavy enough that we just let it do its own thing without top stitching. The pockets, of course, were top stitched. But in this case, we did contrast stitching, and you can see the stitching at the back. And then we stitched the pockets on right on the edge. Now, in any garment, you want to mirror your top stitching. So we just did on the edge there, and we did it up right on the edge there. I mean, it's literally 1/8 of an inch away from the line, the stitch line, and the shoulder's the same. Now, if you did a double stitch on your pocket, you would do a double stitch on your darts and on your front. Again, we did it right on the edge, your shoulders and your back. So, and if you just did 1/4 of an inch away from the stitch line, you would mirror that throughout the garment. Okay, so now that we have our sides done, what I want to do, we're going to fold our garment in half because we have a buttonhole feature that is on the side. It goes right through the garment. Now we've marked this on the pattern. I have it in half, and we want the buttonholes to sit exactly the same place on each side. One suggestion is to mark the buttonholes when you have the sides unsewn. But I just wanted to get this in position and show you. So now we have it in half. It should be perfectly in half. And on both the back and the front panels, there's a buttonhole mark. So actually, this is backwards, but that's okay. So my buttonhole mark, you can see it there, is right there. So this is also arbitrary. I mean, you could, and make, you know, when it's sitting on your body, do you want this to sit on your waist and at the back? Like this could be higher or lower. So it all depends on your body. So if it was for me, I think I want it in my waist, the waist level. So my waist level is about 16 inches. So that works out. So make sure your fabric lays flat between the side seam and your buttonhole. You don't want it one side puffing on the other side. You want it flat. Okay. So there we have our buttonhole marks. And they're right here. So we are going to stitch those buttonholes, and you're going to stitch the buttonhole right through both layers of your fabric. You could also move your buttonholes outward. You could put them on the ends, right on the edges. But the design of this is so that this just gives you a little bit of flavor and movement. Another way to do this is to, before you stitch the side seams, you're going to mark your buttonholes, and you're going to make your buttonhole on the front, and then you're also going to make a buttonhole at the back in the same spot. We did buttonholes like this in the Porsche pattern. So instead, you can stitch the side seams, and because it's, you know, it's pretty much, you can adjust, that way you can adjust this part of the garment. And if you do the buttonhole right through the garment, it's always going to have this, which is what is intended. So it's up to you to do that option. So what we're going to do is actually just stitch through both layers. And then your belt is going to thread through to the front for a tie. Let's talk about the collar. So this piece in the pattern is the collar. And when you're using soft linen like this, you might want to stabilize the collar and the cuffs. But I like it soft. So this, we didn't do any stable because it's thicker fabric. This is fine and flimsy, and it's like pre-washed, and it's very soft. So it's just going to be floppy. So it's up to you. You'll have your two pieces, and on one piece, I serged it, and then I folded it to its wrong side. So that's the right side. And then you pin it onto the other piece so that that seam allowance sticks out, like so. And you're going to measure this around your collar so that it fits if you stitch these sides. So it should fit directly and perfectly onto there. Don't worry about this because it is fixable if you're off a little bit. But as long as you measure right to the edges with the seam allowance of 1/4 of an inch, that's all I do. And I did it here, so now I stitched it there on each side. I've measured and I stitched, and you can see because I've introduced pink into the mix because the buttons were pink. I decided to put this underneath. I want it underneath the collar, so it's going to be inside. So the next part of this is once you've stitched it like so, you're going to pull it out to the right side. And we're going to press it, and we're going to top stitch this. So I'm going to start pinning this on. But first, to hold my folded underneath collar in place, I'm just pinning it down. So now, hopefully my measurements are good. I'm going to pin the collar onto the garment where I'm going to stitch it on. Now I'm pinning the right side of my collar in place, right sides together. And see, I'm pinning just where my fold is here. This is a very easy way to do a collar. And also, if you're slightly off, you're going to have to do a little stretching, which is fine. We are not perfect. Our hands are not machines. We all sew a little differently. But you see, if I stretch that a little bit, not much, and make it fit, and you did measuring before, so you make sure that you're right on your edge here and pinned all the way around. So that's going to be sewn in place. And then we're going to fold this piece over the seam allowance and stitch it down. So let's stitch that on. It looks great. So we sewed it onto the right side, and then we, as you can see here, and then we right to the edge, and then we folded this. We just pressed the seam allowance upward, and then put the folded piece right on the stitch line there. And we're going to stitch it down, and then we're going to top stitch it on the very edge, like mirroring our top stitch style. Isn't that great? Got the tie, you put the tie through the back and then through the front. And again, mine will stay there, but you could, again, do the buttonholes, 4 buttonholes on the front and the back. I think it looks fantastic. Okay, so the next piece of it, and we stitched the collar on and top stitched. Looks fantastic. I love the pink. I think it made it quite fun. And now we have the cuffs. And the cuffs are quite wide. We're going to stitch them wrong sides together. We're going to stitch the outsides and then turn them. And then we're going to stitch them onto our sleeve opening. And we're going to do it right sides together and all the way around that armhole. And either just cross over or just meet, and then we'll turn that back up. We're going to top stitch the cuff, and then we're going to actually top stitch this down. And we also did the inside crotch seam, just matched the crotch pieces and the ends so that they match. And then we're also going to do a rolled hem. I'm going to stitch that and stitch that. And then we will be done with our INGA overalls. We finished our INGA overalls and we put the cuffs on, so it creates this great sleeve. I did it deeper than this one. This is actually a bigger size. And at the back, the yoke, that's where we crossed over our cuff. And we just stitched it on and then top stitched it again along the edge, And then they're hemmed, and we folded it and folded it again, pressed, and then did along the edge, and we stitched it down. So it's really fabulous, and there we have it. A little bit of a different look, a little bit bigger, so the neck is bigger, and we've got our buttons and our tie. A much softer looking version of this one. You could do seasons. I love that. So I wanted to talk about these overalls, which you saw me earlier in this series, in this video. And they're in the same pattern as our blue floral. And we just change the top edge. And you've got a facing. Very easy. And facing at the back. And then the back's cut upward, just with the facing. Very simple. And straps. And then there's the option to do the metal ring here, or you do just a knot, which could be softer. And then we added the patch, which you've seen, a back pocket, a front pocket, which is higher, and then we did the keyhole pocket, which I love, and we've done that before. The armhole is also a lot higher than this one. So you've got two options. See how that is? And then this one. And you just throw this on and off you go. I love overalls, and there's a little elastic. Actually, we put you can do elastic. I think we did a tie in here for whatever reason, but it looks great. A completely different look. So I hope you've enjoyed our overalls. I do. And they're everywhere right now, but now you can make your own. And again, in any fabric. I love linen. It's really awesome for this project. So I hope you've enjoyed the overalls, and I'll see you next time.